We're back. It's been a while, but I'm finally back in the saddle. Let's just jump right into Kanye because that's what we're all here for. So, let's start with the listening party first. The listening party allowed us to get a lot more of an idea of what this album is going for. It's going to be much more bleak. It's going to be a lot more trap influenced. And the set design and the camera angles and Kanye West himself in the stream, it does match that tone very well. So I think we have a better idea of what the sound is going to be for this album. It's a lot more finished, or it's not as much in the rough drafts as Donda 1 was. The stream itself, we managed to get some really cool moments. We got some really obscure ones. And then we, of course, got the second half, which was an unmitigated disaster. And whether it came down to the audio technician, whether it came down to the timing of the tracks, it just all fell apart. And with something like this, where it's ran perfectly basically every time, these moments like this, especially when it comes to Kanye and his perfectionism, you have to get this right every single time. And I feel that now that this one instance where this thing went completely wrong, it has lost the magic that it had before. Now, I'm not going to say that's just like it's completely gone, because you could still capture that experience and you can always do it the second time around or do it a lot more better. But I feel like this is the streaming party where it seems that the magic of this event has been lost. Especially considering, too, that we're going through another rollout that is the same as Donda 1. And we do have the same characters showing up, and we have Marilyn Manson. We do have a couple more interesting features. Of course, we had Jack Harlow, we had Migos, we had the game there, which is nice additions. But the kind of Donda experience from this point on is going to seem, and people may have already seen it already, like this is like from the second or third listening party. But for me, this was the breaking point where it has lost its specialty for me. And it didn't help that the mixing and the timing was absolutely terrible. And I can completely understand why Kanye West just chucked his mic, because as a watcher on a stream, if anyone else did that, I would turn it off. And that's what I did. I just turned it off because I couldn't do it. I couldn't watch through this clunky and just scattered mess. So that left kind of a bitter taste in my mouth throughout the entire rollout of this thing. And then, of course, the stem player dropped. Now, the stem player wouldn't be a bad thing. I think it's actually incredibly innovative and allows for a really cool experience to listen to Donda 2. I just don't know if putting it behind a $200 paywall is the way to do it. I brought this up for people that I've been talking with. I don't know why. I understand owning your masters. I understand that the streaming platforms are very greedy. They are very penny pinching, and they like to take every chance they get from stealing profits from artists. I am totally for the artists to receive their profits because they deserve it. They are the ones with the creative vision. They are the ones that should be deserving the most profit out of anybody when it comes to a label and when it comes to a team. But I don't understand how putting it behind a $200 paywall is the way to do it. And like I was saying, I don't understand why you couldn't just put the Donda 2 album itself without like the stem player kind of tracks or whatever. I don't understand why you couldn't just put it up for even like $20 or $15 just as the audio files like everyone else does. Because I believe, and this is a really odd example, and it's a really weird example, that Chance the Rapper's The Big Day did this. He allowed you to go on the website and purchase his album. I don't understand why this couldn't be done with Donda 2, but I understand the other side of it, and we're going to talk more about the stem player, that the stem player is a really cool concept. And I know a couple of people that have it. I've seen a lot of reactors use it. It's a really amazing idea because it allows you to take the artist's input, take the artist's album, take the artist's songs, and it allows you to manipulate them and to make them your own and to make them something that's to your taste. You can make remixes of it just from just moving around a couple toggles on a small little pod thing. That's so cool. And I know that it was in like the development stages around Donda 1, and we got to see a little bit of a taste of it. But getting it into your hands, I can only imagine the power of being able to manipulate one of your favorite songs off of Donda 1 or Donda 2, the power to turn down the treble, to separate the audio track, to be able to focus on the bass, or take two particular parts and just to flesh them out more or show them out more and take aback some things. It allows you to make the album your own, and that's an incredible thing. I just wish it wasn't behind a $200 paywall. And I know Kanye West has made incredible amounts of profit from this, but it severely separates your audience. Because I know for myself, I'm not in a financial situation to purchase a $250 with conversion rates. Basically, while it's a stem player, it's basically just like an audio device. I can make an excuse for buying a $100 or $200, maybe even $300 record player because I have tons of records. I don't know how I'm going to be able to relay of buying a $200 pod thing that no one really understands besides myself. I don't know how I'm supposed to relay that. So that's just my personal thing with it. I just wish that the accessibility of this album was a lot more open, and it was a lot more, I guess, as I put the word, accessible. I wish I'm able to just, while I'm not able to experience the VIP experience that everyone has, and that's another thing. I completely agree that jumping onto this stem player bandwagon allows for this really interesting kind of evolution of Donda 2, and you're just witnessing it in front of your eyes, and hopefully there are some more revised edits, because what we got, and I'm going to get to that in a bit, what we got is really rough. But the ability to gain this kind of seeing this album blossom into something that could potentially be fantastic is something really cool. And I'm sad because people in my situation, when it comes to finances, aren't able to experience that. And while there should be some paywalls for exclusive VIP things, we've seen VIP tickets, we've seen VIP meet and greets type of things. I'm totally fine with that. But when you're putting it onto a website or putting it out to the public that is more for general consumption, I don't know as an artist if kind of segregating or isolating an audience that really wants to listen to it behind a $200 paywall is really something I can get behind. That's just my personal opinion. But let's talk about the album itself. The album, as I said, the album's bones are there, and there's bones of great tracks. True Love is incredible. It's probably one of my favorite tracks on here. XXXTentacion's integration is probably one of the best integrations of a posthumous verse that I've seen. And it works really well. It works with the song itself and this kind of dire tone to it. It just really works. Get Lost is one of my favorites as well. I know a lot of people don't like that track, but I love auto-tune led tracks where there's nothing going on in the background. There's no kind of bells and whistles. It's just an auto-tune led track. I've loved Bon Iver for years. 715 Creeks and Woods are some of my favorite songs of all time just because of the track being just auto-tune led. And we do get a little bit of glimpse into the emotion, the rawness of this performance. And with that auto-tune, it creates these weird melodies and this weird kind of, not transcendent, but it creates this really interesting atmosphere. Flowers is really cool. It has this really interesting beat. Security has a very strong Yeezus and Life of Pablo type of vibe, but I really enjoy it. We Did It Kid has an incredible Migos performance that honestly we've been lacking for years. I wish Baby Keem was more pronounced on it. Happy is another incredible one. I know a lot of people don't really like that one, but the instrumental, I believe Buddha Bless did that beat. It's so good. And Future and Kanye bring out a really nice performance. That Do I Look Happy, Do I Look Happy to You? While you may not be considered a hook, I find myself just going around the house just saying, do I look happy? Do I look happy to you? Just, it's a hook in a way, and it's not a hook at the same time, but I really enjoy that. Louis Bags, Jack Harlow brings an incredible feature. Sci-Fi has a really kind of never abandon your family type of sound. But there's other parts that are really odd and they don't really work. Broken Road, another great example, but this song is too short. We get to something like Pablo. Pablo, I think, just sounds too generic. And I know that Pablo is one of the standout tracks for a lot of people. I just find that it's just very typical Future. Travis Scott brings a nice kind of hook to it, but I just think it's really typical. Louis Bags has the issue where there's a lot of repetitiveness, and I know Trap has this thing of being very repetitive when it comes to the vocal flows and the vocal lines, but I think this is too repetitive. Sci-Fi has the voice of Morgan Freeman line. And the other song, I think it's the song with Soulja Boy. The mixing on the Soulja Boy song and the John Denton video really made this stand out. The vocal mixing on Kanye's vocals on First Time in a Long Time, and the repetitiveness does carry on to that. The vocal mixing is terrible. It sounds really tinny. It sounds very crunchy. It sounds really, really strange. And I know that this album is unfinished. I totally understand that, and that's probably the number one comment that I'm probably going to get on this video. Oh, it's unfinished. Come back in a couple months, it's going to sound a lot better. While I'm totally cool with that, I'm totally fine seeing this album form and kind of transform. But after all of the albums, and especially the rollout of how elongated and how kind of grueling that was, I don't know for myself if I'm going to be able to tolerate that again. And as this rollout was happening, I was thinking back to another video I made, which was mixing and mastering what happened. And I was very critical of particular artists about their mixing and mastering of why these albums are being released in these states. I believe Casey Musgraves was the biggest example I had, because the vocal mixing and processing and mastering was so overblown that it was borderline unlistenable. And I could think of other examples like Roddy Ricch. I can think of Polo G as another example. And I was thinking to myself, if I'm not giving Polo G, if I'm not giving Casey Musgraves, which is not a rap example, but you get what I mean. If I'm not giving that artist a pass, if I'm not giving Roddy Ricch a pass, why do I give Kanye one? And I understand that Kanye has this reputation, this kind of repertoire of being one of the greatest rappers of all time. And he has this incredible respect that I have and the industry has for him. But I need to stand my ground for this particular time, because I don't want to go through this again personally. I want a finished product to be a finished product. I want to be able to put on an album knowing that it is finished, it is cohesive, every piece is meant to be there, and every piece has been refined to the best of its abilities. I don't want to go into an album knowing that 6 months down the road or 3 months down the road that it's going to all be fixed and it's going to all be better. It's been a thing in gaming for a long time, especially when we consider the issues, if you are into gaming at all, Battlefield 2042. That game was released in a terrible, buggy mess, and it still is to this day. And the player base has dropped down to lower than 2,000 players, which is incredibly low for a Battlefield game. And it's a perfect translation into music, because it's happening the same way that the gaming industry has been, where games are being released in early access and pre-alpha in beta, and when they are fully released, they should have stayed delayed. They should have stayed in that pre-alpha build. So with that mindset, I cannot forgive this album being unfinished. I want a fully fleshed out album. I've been waiting. I waited so long for Donda 1, and while the experience itself, I can give it as novel, I can give it as unique, I can kind of give it a pass to that. This time, it's different because we're going through this process again. The listening parties, the difference is, of course, is the stem player, the way to listen to the album. That's really the only difference. And I'm not going to go through this again because it's the same old song and dance at this point. So forgive me, but I'm going to be more critical of this release. At this point in time, Donda 2, with all of the unfinished portions and the flub verses, there's a lot of points on this album where there should be finished verses, but it's just Kanye just mumbling like through an entire like 4 or 5 bars. While this album has the good bones that I was talking about, at this point in time, I think this album right now is about a 4 or 5 out of 10. There is a lot of work to be done. And I'm going to still be listening for it. I'm still going to try my best to be excited for it. But I'm not going to give it the pass that I was giving Donda 1. Because again, I've gone through this same song and dance multiple times. And I don't know if I want to go through this again. Especially considering that I wasn't giving artists that pass before. If you get what I'm saying, that's just totally me though. If you are willing to give that artist a pass, if you're willing to give Kanye a pass, that's totally up to your discretion. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. If you are excited for Donda 2, that's incredible. I'm excited that you are able to have this really gratifying experience of watching this album form. But even when this album does drop, if it does, in a fully released state, that idea of this album just being really stretched out is going to linger with me when it comes to the first reaction, if it does drop on streaming services, which is totally up to Kanye's discretion. And I would much prefer that I'm able to pay 15, even $20 to get the album in an audio format. I'm willing to at least pay a little bit more to get it on the audio format instead of paying for that $200 paywall. But that's pretty much all of my thoughts on Donda 2. I will be looking out for it, of course. I'm still optimistic because, again, the bones of this album are good, but there's a lot more of kind of negativity or kind of more pessimism towards this release. So, what are your thoughts in the comments down below? Thank you for watching again. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about this, and I'm going to try to be more consistent throughout because it's been a long time, but I want to get back on the saddle again. So, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.